Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. Previously, we worked on updating our inventory scene and our battle menu to support using our new capture item type. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the video description to the source code up to this point, as well as the complete source code for this video. There'll also be a link to previous videos if you'd like to catch up. So let's get started. Now that we've updated our inventory scene and our battle menu to support using different item types, what we need to do next is now we need to go ahead and update our battle scene to handle when we use these other items. So currently how we have our battle scene structured is we keep track if an item was actually used. And when we use an item, no matter what the item is, we go ahead and have our enemy attack us. And all we're doing is we're just updating our monster's health by grabbing the latest health from our data manager. And so that's why when we use our damaged ball, it actually works right now in our scene. And so what we need to do now is we need to check what type of item was actually used and then do different things depending on what that item is. And so what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a few new states to our state machine, and then that way we can have each state handle each different item category differently and do the logic that's tied to it. And so again, start these changes. Let's jump over to our preload scene. And the first thing we'll do is let's update our starting scene to be our battle scene. So we'll start right off in our battle. Then let's go to the top of our class and we're going to go ahead and add in a few new battle states. And so for our states, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add a general state for using items. So we're going to do used item. All right, so our used item state, this will be the first state we're going to transition to once we recognize we're using an item. And then this state's going to be responsible for transitioning to our other states depending on what type of item was used. So after our used item, we're going to have one for our heal item was used. And so we'll have heal item used. And so anytime we use a category item that's heal, we'll transition to this state. And then we'll need one for our capture items. So we'll do capture item used. All right, and then finally we're gonna add one more state, and this is for when we catch our enemy monster. And so if we're able to use a capture item and we actually catch our enemy monster, then we would actually transition to the state. And now this is where we would do things like update our monster's EXP. We could add that monster to our party, and different things like that. And so we'll go ahead and add that in that state. All right, so the next thing we'll do is let's come down to where we handle our player inputs. And what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna go ahead and add in one of our states that we just added. And so we're gonna add in one for capture item used. And so when we use our capture item, we're gonna want to allow our player to go ahead and provide input because we're gonna display messages like, hey, you caught the monster, or oh, you almost caught the monster, and different things like that. And we'll need to be able to handle that. All right, so then next what we'll do is let's jump back down to our battle state. And so when we use our item, we're gonna go ahead and transition to our new state, and we're gonna move this logic to one of our new states. And so what we'll do is we're just gonna do this. Let's reference our battle state machine. Go and call set state, and we're gonna go ahead and transition into our battle states, and we're gonna go ahead and go into our used item. So then real quick, what we'll go ahead and do is let's come down to the bottom of our state machine and we'll go ahead and add in our new states. And so I'm just going to go ahead and copy this here for where we switch our monster. Let's go ahead and paste that. All right, now we just need to add this for each of the new states we just added. And so first we'll have used item, and then we'll have our heal item, we'll have our capture item, and then we'll have caught monster. All right, so the next what we'll do is let's come back to our battle state, and we're going to grab the rest of the code that we left. So this logic here, basically this is what we're going to do if we're using a healing item. So we'll go ahead and come back down to our new states, and let's go into our heal item was used, and on our on enter method, we'll go ahead and paste that code. So now what we want to do is in our used item battle state, we want to check our item category and transition to the appropriate state that we need to. So what we'll do is we'll add in our switch statement. And we're going to go ahead and do this. We'll do our battle menu, our item used, and now we'll go ahead and do category. And so this is one of the reasons why we update our battle menu. So then that we can actually grab our item and we'll know which kind of category it's tied to. And so do case. Let's go ahead and do item, category. First, we'll go ahead and do capture. And so if it's a capture item, we'll go ahead and do our battle state machine. We'll do set state. And then what we'll do is our battle states. And we want to go to our capture item used. And we'll go ahead and do our break statement. And then let's go ahead and copy this. We'll go ahead and paste it. Let's go ahead and do our heal item category. And we'll do heal item used. Then finally, let's go ahead and do our default. And we will go ahead and use our exhaustive guard just to make sure we covered all of our states. Let's do our battle menu, item used, and then category. All right, so with our changes, we should be able to go and test and make sure everything's still functioning. All right, so what we'll do is let's go into our battle. Let's go and do fight real quick so we take some damage. Let's go into our items. We'll go ahead and use our potion on Iguanodonite. We jump back to our battle scene. And so we'll see that, hey, we used our potion. And now we check our states. We can see right away, we go into enemy input, battle. We now transition to our new used item state. We now transition into our heal item. And now we go ahead and have our enemy attack us. All right, so we go ahead and do item. Let's go ahead and use our damaged ball. And so now what should happen is our game should appear to freeze. And that's because we're not doing anything. But if we check our states, we can see we go into enemy input, battle, used items, and then we capture item was used. All right, so now we just need to go ahead and update our capture item used battle state. All right, so in our capture item used state, this is where we actually want to do all of our animations for where we throw our ball and we try to capture our monster. So all those animations and game objects we built previously, we're going to now go ahead and import those in and use them in our battle scene. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to actually create an instance of our ball. So what we'll do is let's jump up to the top of our class. We'll go ahead and add in a few new properties on our class. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a Boolean property to keep track if we actually captured a monster. So we're just going to copy this here. We'll go ahead and paste it. And so what we'll do is we'll do monster captured. And so this is going to be used by our other states. So then that way we know if we captured an enemy monster, then the enemy shouldn't actually take their turn. Next, we want to go ahead and create a property for our ball. And so for our type, we'll go ahead and reference our ball class. And now we need to go ahead and create our instance and update our initial property. So let's come down to our init method. And so let's go ahead and copy this here. Let's go ahead and paste it. And so we'll go ahead and change this to monster capture. It'll be false. So now in our create method, after we create our available monsters, let's go ahead and create an instance of our ball. So we'll do this ball will be equal to a new ball instance. So for our configuration, we'll do our scene. So we'll pass in this. Our asset key will go ahead and be our battle asset keys, and we want to reference our damaged ball. Our asset frame will be 0. Our scale will be 0.1. And then we'll have skip battle animations will be equal to this, and if we're skipping our animations. So now what we want to do is let's come back down to our state for where we use our capture item, and let's go ahead and open up our test scene. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to copy our animation logic that we did here when we threw our ball. And so let's just go ahead and copy all this logic here. We'll come over to our battle scene and let's go ahead and just paste that in. So what we're going to want to do is we need to go ahead and update our state to go ahead and allow it to be asynchronous so that we can use await. All right, so now what we'd actually need to do is we need to determine if we actually capture our enemy monster. For the time being, we're just going to go ahead and hard code this to a Boolean value so we can toggle it so we can test our various functionality. And then later on, we'll go ahead and refactor this so we can go ahead and use an algorithm to figure this out. So what we'll do is we'll do const. We're just going to call this was captured. We're going to set it equal to true. So we'll say, hey, we caught him every time. And so now what we want to go ahead and do is we want to go ahead and throw our ball. Then we want to go ahead and reference our active enemy monster. And we want to go ahead and do our play catch animation that we added. So next, we're going to go ahead and update our animation here. So our shake ball animation, we'll go ahead and set this to 3. All right, so then after our shake ball animation, what we need to do now is determine if our enemy monster was actually caught. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to do a check. We'll do if we capture our enemy monster. Then we don't want to actually hide our ball or play our failed catch animation. Instead, we want to have our ball stay on our screen and we transition to the end of our battle. And so to go ahead and do this, we're going to set our new property, monster captured, equal to true. Then we'll want to go ahead and update our state that we're in. So we'll do our battle state machine, and we're going to go ahead and set state. And we'll go ahead and set this to our battle states. And we're going to transition to our post-attack check state. Then we'll go ahead and return. If we fail to capture the enemy monster, now we want to go ahead and use our sleep method to go ahead and wait before we hide our ball. And now we just need to go ahead and update our reference to our active enemy monster. And we'll do play catch animation failed. All right, so what we want to do now is we're going to display a message. So then that we say, hey, the enemy monster breaks free. So go ahead and do that. We're going to reference our battle menu. And then what we'll do is we're going to go do update info pane messages and wait for input. And then for our message, we're going to say the wild monster breaks free. And then we need to go ahead and provide our callback. And so for the time being, we're going to go ahead and leave this as a callback. Otherwise, we're going to have to refactor a bunch of code right now in order to support returning a promise. So for the time being, we'll leave this and we'll have a to-do to come back and fix this. So after we display our message, then what we'll want to go ahead and do is we want to go ahead and have our delay call, then have our enemy attack us. We're just going to copy this code from our heal item use state, and we'll paste inside here. So we'll wait our 500 milliseconds, enemy will attack, and then we'll go to our post-attack check state. All right, so next thing we need to do is now we need to go ahead and update our post-attack check state to handle when we're trying to capture that enemy monster. So what we'll do is let's come into our post-battle sequence check method. And what we'll want to do is we're going to want to check to see if we were able to catch that enemy monster. And if so, then we want to go ahead and transition to our end of our battle. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and have the enemy attack us. So what we'll do is right before we check if we're fainted, let's go ahead and add in our checks. We'll do if this monster was captured. All right, so if we did catch the enemy monster, we're going to go ahead and do the same logic that we're doing if the enemy monster fainted. And so what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and do our death animation so everything animates off the screen. We'll go ahead and display a message to the player, and then we'll transition over to gaining experience, so then that way our player will gain experience for capturing the enemy monster. And so what we'll go ahead and do is let's just copy all this code. We're going to paste it, and we're going to change our comment, and so we're just going to say enemy monster was captured. And so for our message, we're just going to say you caught the enemy monster's name. We'll have the end of our sentence. And then what we'll do is we'll go into our gain experience. All right, so the last thing we'll want to do is now we need to actually transition to our state for we actually handle where the enemy monster was actually captured. And so what we'll do is let's jump down to our battle state for gaining experience. All right, so then what we'll want to do is right before we transition to our finished state, we want to go ahead and check to see if an enemy was captured, and if so, then we want to go ahead and transition to our caught monster state. And the reason for that is we're going to have some additional logic in our caught monster state that we need to run before we actually transition to our finished state. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is let's go ahead and add our if statements. We'll do if this monster was captured. Then we want to go ahead and transition to our other state. So we're just going to copy this here. Let's go ahead and paste it. And we're going to go ahead and go into our caught monster state. And then we'll go ahead and return. All right, then one last thing we're going to do before we get to our caught monster state is we're just going to move this logic here before we update our data manager. We're going to move this to our finished state. So then that way it's common across all of our states that we do it in one location. And the reason for that is we're updating it here because our monsters gain experience and we needed to go ahead and store that data. But when we catch an enemy monster, we're also going to be adding that monster to our party and we'll need to save that data as well. And so instead of doing multiple saves to our data manager, we'll just go ahead and do it once and we'll do it in our finished state. Let's go ahead and go up to our finished state. And so right before we transition to our next scene, we'll go ahead and paste that line of code. All right, so then the last thing we need to do before we test all of our logic, let's come down to our caught monster state. All right, so in our caught monster state, what we're going to want to do is this is where we'll want to go ahead and actually store that monster into our party. And so what we'll need to do is we'll need to make a copy of the enemy monster's data that we fought. So we're getting a copy of all their properties. So then that will have things like their level, their attacks, and things like that. We'll also want to generate a unique ID for them, so then that way that monster will be unique in our party. And then that way it's going to allow us to catch multiple of the same type, so like multiple Carnodusks, because each one will have a unique ID, we can have multiple of them in our party. So to go ahead and do this, the first thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and create our monster data. And so what we'll do is we'll make a variable, do const, we're going to do updated monster, we're going to set that equal to an object. And inside this object, we're going to go ahead and make a copy of our scene data. And we're going to go ahead and reference our enemy monsters and reference our first monster. So then what we'll do is now we need to go ahead and update their ID. And so for the time being, I'm just going to do this as a to-do for our string. We'll come back to that. And then we want to go ahead and update their HP. And so for their HP, we want to go ahead and set that equal to our active enemy monster and what their HP is currently at. And then that way it's going to be reflective of whatever happened in our battle. And so if we capture the monster and they only had 25% health, once they're in our party, they would still only have 25% health. So once we have our data for our monster, we need to go ahead and add this to our player monsters. And then that way, once we reach our finished state, we'll persist that into our player party data in our data manager. And so what we'll do is we'll reference our scene data. We're going to go ahead and do our player monsters, and we're going to do a push. And so we'll add this to our array. We'll add in our updated monster. So now finally, we just need to go ahead and transition to our finished state. So let's copy this. We'll go ahead and paste it. And now we want to go ahead and change this to the finished state. All right, so now the last thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and update our ID. And so what we discussed before is we want to go ahead and create a unique ID, so a UID for this. And to do this, we're going to go ahead and use the Phaser framework because they have built-in methods for generating this for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make a new function inside our random utils. So if we go ahead and go into our utils file, let's go ahead and go into our random file, and we'll go ahead and add a new function. And so at the bottom of our file, what we'll go ahead and do is let's just export out a new function, and we're going to do generate UUID. So all we're going to do in here is we're going to use our Phaser libraries. We're going to do return Phaser math random. We're going to do UUID. All right, so the reason we're placing this in its own function is that way later on, if we ever want to change how we're generating these UUIDs, we can just replace that logic here, and we don't have to do it in multiple locations. So now what we can do is if we jump back over to our battle scene, in our to-do here, we're just going to reference our new function. So we'll do generate UUID, and now we'll have that new string for our monster. All right, so with all of our changes in place, we should now be able to go ahead and test our new functionality. So what we'll go ahead and do is let's come over to our browser. Let's go ahead and go into our inventory. Let's go ahead and use one of our damage balls. And we should see right away we use our item. We catch the enemy monster, and we go ahead and gain experience. Nice. So after we gain our experience, we transition back to our world scene, so our scene ends. And now if we go into our monster party, we can see now we have 4 monsters in our party, and we have 2 Carno Desk. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and save. I'm going to go ahead and refresh. We'll go ahead and try that one more time. So if we go ahead and use our item, let's go use our damage ball to catch the enemy monster. We'll see now we gain more experience. And if we transition back to our world scene, go into our monsters. Oh, we only have 4 monsters. Yeah, so back in our battle scene, what we need to do is we have a placeholder for populating our data if we do not come from our world scene. And so we have this from when we were testing, when we come from our preload scene. So in our init method, let's go ahead and just change this. We're going to copy this code here. We're just going to go ahead and reference our whole array of monsters. And then that way it's not specific monsters. And so we're just going to make a copy of it. So if we do this, we'll do the spread operator to get all of the objects from our array into a new array. And so now when our scene restarts, what should happen is if we go into our party, well, right away we see we have our 4 monsters. So if we go to switch, we'll see our 4 monsters. Let's go ahead and use our item. We're going to try capturing the enemy again. We caught the enemy monster, gain our experience, go back to our world scene, and now if we go into monsters, now we have 5 monsters in our party, and we'll go ahead and save. All right, so now we've tested the happy flow of catching a monster. What we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and have it fail so we can make sure our battle works appropriately. So if we come back to our state for where we go ahead and attempt to capture a monster, let's go ahead and set was captured to go ahead and be false. So now when our scene refreshes, let's go ahead and try to use our item. So we see we have our 5 monsters. And now if we use our damaged ball, we see we use our item. Monster breaks free. They go ahead and attack us, and that's exactly what we want. So now we've tested our various flows, let's go ahead and jump into our preload scene. Let's go back to our title scene. And what I want to do is I just want to go ahead and test our animations and make sure everything's working how we expect. So go into options, let's turn back on our animations. And then what we'll go ahead and do is if we just go ahead and reset back to our battle scene, we should jump right into our battle. We'll see the enemy monster comes out. Let's go ahead and try using our item. All right, we have our animation, enemy disappears. Oh, enemy breaks free, and our ball disappears how we expect. And then they go ahead and attack us, nice. So let's go ahead and go into our battle scene, and let's switch this back to be true. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch our shake ball animation back to be 2. So then that way we have 3 total shakes instead of 4. And now let's go ahead and use our item. We'll use our damaged ball. All right, so we see we catch the enemy monster. We display our text. The ball stays on our screen and the enemy monster does not. All right, we gain our experience and we level up. All right, so now we've tested our changes. What we're going to do is let's jump back to our preload scene and let's go ahead and switch this back to our title scene. Alright, so with that, that brings this video to an end. In our next video, we're going to go ahead and work on adding in our actual algorithm for being able to catch monsters. And so instead of having our hard-coded boolean, we'll add in logic so we can use things like the monster's HP to figure out if we can catch the enemy monster. So as a reminder, there's a link in the description of the video to the complete source code for this video, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more great Phaser 3 content, please see the links on your screen now.